On today's episode, we're going to talk about German films and TV shows. In fact, we will talk about my favorite ones. I love a good story, and this list compiles those which, in my opinion, are some of Germany's best. Hello, Lieblings! I'm Madi, science fiction and fantasy author who's been living in southern Germany since 2014. Today we're going to talk about German stories through the medium of film and television, how their culture influences certain stories, and how I, as a non-German, have interpreted them. And also, why I think these stories should be seen by all. Seriously, guys, we all know that Hollywood shouldn't have the monopoly on good storytelling. Oh god, it's so hot. Whew. I am sweating. Awesome. But before we get started, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell if you haven't already. Here on Adventures of Lamadi, we talk about writing, living abroad, and everything in between. So usually I will do like a list, like went through blah, blah, blah. But I thought I'm going to, shake things up and do a countdown to my favorite German film and TV shows. This is not my first rodeo with a list like this. I have done other videos, for example, a list of my favorite German and American movies that can be found on the opposite countries, because a lot of the German films I'm going to list, sorry Americans, are kind of hard to get in the States. Nothing I can do about it unless you get a good VPN, or if you know what the hell I'm talking about. Anyway, so and I've also done a film talking about a film that encapsulates American culture. So yeah, I love movies. I love stories. So I talk about these things a lot. So anyway, let's go on to the list, and we're going to start off with number 6, and that is the movie Metropolis. Now, any movie critic or movie buff worth their salt, they're going to know about Metropolis. What a lot of them don't know is that it's a German film. Metropolis premiered in 1927 and is by the German director Franz Liszt. This movie, granted, I mean, it's a silent film. I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people don't realize that it was originally German, because a lot of them, like has survived now is with English subtitles or English cards or whatever you want to call it in the vocabulary of silent films. But it is German. In fact, it was kind of the first of its kind in terms of the aesthetic of science fiction. Science fiction movies before then were kind of done in terms of comedy and still in a fantasy aesthetic. But Metropolis was the one that really broke through and created the aesthetic that has since influenced pretty much every science fiction film since 1927. And I had to bring this up because I think it's so awesome that you have this German film from the beginning of filmmaking that still resonates in movies today. I just think it's amazing how well you could see that aesthetic even from the 2001 Space Odyssey or Star Wars or Hunger Games. Like, those aesthetics, they came from Metropolis. And so I had to bring it up. I had to be like, woohoo, yay, Germany influencing the film industry. It's awesome. So yeah, that's my number 6. Number 5 is Das Leben der Anderen. I have talked about this film in my other video on the, what films you can see during a pandemic. And this movie I will always bring up. It is the first movie I watched when I was actually starting to study German. And it is such a fantastic story, and it delves into kind of this seedy part of East German history with the Stasi and everything, and it's just fantastic storytelling that literally keeps you on the edge of your seat until the very end. And even then, like right when you think the story is over, it just rips at your heartstrings. It's brilliant. It's utterly brilliant. If you see me shining right now, guys, FYI, I am sweating. I live in a 150-year-old house that has no air conditioning, and despite what they say about German houses, not all of them actually let the heat out. It's like a toaster oven in here. It just holds all the heat in. It's awesome. So yeah, I'm sorry. Sorry, but not sorry. I can't do anything about it. All right. Continuing on, number 4, speaking of heartstrings, is Hanukk im Kopf by Til Schweiger. This movie it's beautiful, but I have to recommend, guys, that if you find yourself watching this movie, have at least 1 or 2 boxes of tissues on hand, because you will ugly cry. Yeah, in terms of, you know, as much as das Leben der anderen will like really, it'll tug at your heartstrings, like Hanukk im Kopf will literally just rip it. So the story itself, it tells the story of an older gentleman who is on the early stages of Alzheimer's. His granddaughter, of course, is really distressed with seeing this and talks to his doctor about what can be done. And he recommends that if her grandfather had seen, you know, is among places that are linked to a specific memory or good memories that could probably help, you know, help maintain those neural pathways or whatever. So she then runs off with her grandfather, and they do a road trip from there in the northern part of Germany to Venice. And it is such a just beautiful adventure, and it's just, oh God, like, yeah, no, literally ugly crying. There is actually an English version of this with the literal direct translation, Honey in the Head, that Til Schweiger, who directed the original film and also acted in it, he directed the English version as well. It didn't do well on the stage, but I think it's a shame, because the story itself is beautiful, but honestly, like, why remake it? I mean, we remake it because, let's face it, a lot of Americans don't like watching movies with subtitles. I think that's why I wanted to try to like get into that market, and I get it. But the original German movie, is beautiful and perfect as is. Like, yeah, whatever. But I highly recommend it. Number 4, Hanukk im Kopf, go for it. Number 3 is Der Vorname, which translates to the first name. This movie I find utterly brilliant. This is kind of a Kammerspiel, or it's kind of like a chamber play, or in English we would call it like a box play or a movie, where pretty much the entire story takes place in literally a room, in a living room. I mean, there, of course, like in this movie, yeah, sometimes it happens in the kitchen, sometimes a little bit outside. It's pretty much all in this one house. But the bulk of the drama, yes, baby bear, yes, the bulk of the drama takes place in the living room. And the story is about, there's a dinner party that kind of goes awry when one young gentleman and his pregnant wife admit to everybody that they are going to name their child Adolf, as in Adolf Hitler. And of course, this sparks a huge debate on whether that's a good idea or not. And this is a movie that I feel that it's something that really can only be done in Germany, because first off, Germany has these naming laws. In the US, we don't have that, because naming your children it falls under the First Amendment, you have freedom of speech, which is why you have people like Gwyneth Paltrow naming their kids Apple. Don't get me started. But the idea of it is to protect children. Isn't that right? Is it to protect children like you? Yeah. You need to be protected. Yeah. So, yeah, so the idea that you have these naming laws to begin with is why these kind of conversations are had. In Germany, in the US, you wouldn't have these kind of conversations. It's, you know, okay, your relative's going to name their kid God knows what. It's not really your place. They're not your kid. So that conversation would never happen. If you try to do Der Vorname in the States, you would only get relatives being like, oh, that's nice. And that's it, and the movie's over. But in Germany, you would actually have like an entire drama that's built around this topic. And I think it's so fascinating, and the writing is so good. So good. I recommend it. Go watch Der Vorname. So I have to hold her like this now. It's so all right, baby. I'll fill this episode, and then we go upstairs. Yeah. What do you think? I need you to like look. What do you think? What do you think? Yeah, you're too hot just to be on my lap, baby bear. Okay. Number 2 is the only one I actually own a physical copy, and that is Sissy. Yay! Of course, like, who doesn't have this movie on their list, right? Cece tells the story of Elizabeth of Bavaria and essentially how she became the Empress of Austria. It is very loosely based off of the true story of Elizabeth of Bavaria and her marriage to Franz Josef, the Emperor of Austria. And, oh, God, so hot. And, I mean, it's a very romanticized version of the story. I mean, a lot of the facts are, if you actually study the life of Elizabeth of Bavaria, or Cece is her nickname, thus the name of the film, it's, there's a lot of truth to it. Of course, this movie is just, like, German Disney-fied, for lack of a better description. So it is such a saccharine film, and the costumes are stunning. And actually, one reason why this is very high on my list is because it is the first German movie I ever watched. And the reason for that is because they actually showed the Sisi movies in Peru. And my mom grew up watching these films and loved it. And I remember when I was younger, she would talk about it. And I just thought, this is kind of interesting. And for her birthday one year, while I was in high school, and this was back in like the early 2000s. So I went and I searched for a zero region copy of each of the movies in the trilogy. The first two I was able to find in English, and the last one was from Brazil. So that was interesting. But I found the trilogy for it, and then I was actually able to also like watch the films myself. And I had not studied any German at that point, so I was very much just like, ooh, and just being engrossed in the story anyway, and enjoying the costumes. And it's just such a lovely film. And actually, one of my close friends here in Germany, this is kind of like her go-to film, like her comfort film. Whenever she has like time alone, that's a movie she can watch on repeat ad nauseum until the end of time. And I totally get it, especially with a movie like this. I love it. It's super sweet. It's such a feel-good movie. And when you want a good romance, like a good sweet romance, you should watch Cece. It's a beautiful film. That's why it's ranked up there. And my number one is Dark. That's on Netflix. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Like, this is how sci-fi needs to be written. And I mean that in a way because what a big problem with a lot of television shows nowadays is that you have, a lot of times the show they may have like the series Bible ready for, prepared for maybe the first season, but they don't really know where the hell they're going. And so they'll try to make things more complicated, and they'll try to do all these things. And sometimes they're juggling too many balls. So when the series finale finally comes, not everything gets like fixed, or there's no like tied up loose ends. And a lot of times you just may feel unsatisfied. And with Dark, you don't get that feeling because they only planned it for 3 seasons. And wow, what they do in those 3 seasons. And it is a show. One of the reasons why I also love it, besides the really complex storyline, is that you have to watch it more than once. And every time you watch it, it is a new experience, because every time you know just a little bit more of the story, it changes the way you view it. And I think it's just, it's so good. It is so well done. I have watched this series a number of times already, even as I was preparing for each of the season, because there's just so much and so much to remember. Whew, it's a ride. It is a ride. And I recommend for everybody to watch it. And because it's on Netflix, anybody with a Netflix account can watch it and should watch it. Anyway, that's my list. I feel like I know I'm only touching the tip of the iceberg that is the German film industry. There are so many other films that, I could talk about, but those are the ones that I wanted to talk about today. And I'm sure I can always do another list later, but these are the ones that I will always recommend to people if they're asking me for a good German film. Go watch it. And what about you? Tell me in the comments, what is your favorite German film? I really think Germans have a really great way of storytelling that is in a lot of ways different than Americans, and in a good way, of course. It's refreshing and it's new, and we need that because Hollywood is getting really tired, in my opinion. So I'm always looking for new movies, or even just looking at old classics. So please tell me in the comments what your favorite ones are, and I will definitely give them a look. Maybe I'll do a reaction video. I don't know. But yes, let me know in the comments. And that's it. Thank you so much for joining me. If you're new here, please consider subscribing and give this video a thumbs up. It lets me and YouTube and Roxy know that you like content like this and you want to see more. That's what the noise is, and by the way. Please leave me a comment if you have any questions or there's a certain topic you'd like to see on this channel. The God Queen is available in ebook, paperback, and now hardback, and I have all the links in the description below. And don't forget to connect with me on social media, whether it is through Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. And that's it. Until next time, adi!